Well, welcome everybody to our online program on addiction and recovery from the Sunshine Coast Health Center up here in Powell River, BC. And we've been talking about this idea of understanding addiction at the fundamental levels of human motivation. In other words, addiction is not a simple thing. It's not something that, just happens to people. Maybe it's woven right into what it means for them to be human. And the third example we'll give is a fellow by the name of Augusten Burroughs. And Burroughs wrote this really interesting memoir on his drinking. And he gives this line in the memoir. He says, "I used alcohol as an escape hatch, but also as a destination." And it's this second idea of alcohol use as a destination, as some place that he wanted to get to, that really gives us a profound insight into what it means to be an alcoholic. If, say, Augusten Burroughs were to come to a typical addiction therapist, the therapist might say, "Oh, look at all these things going on in his background and he's suffering, and so we better deal with all of this suffering, and that way he won't have to turn to the bottle." But if he were to do that, he'd miss out on this huge component of the addiction, which is the destination part. So they get the escape hatch part right, but they miss the destination part. And that's really so fundamental, this idea that maybe I'm not really running away from some misery, from childhood. Maybe I'm not clinically depressed and I'm using the drug as a way to overcome that and feel better. Maybe there's something beyond that. Maybe it's just this place I want to get to because I just feel more comfortable there versus in my clean and sober daily life. Life is kind of dull and drab and not very interesting. But under the influence of alcohol, all of a sudden, get a little more energy, feel a little more vital and alive. This really is this idea of a destination, of someplace that Burroughs wanted to get to in order just to be able to feel more contented in life. And it's this idea, I think, that is pretty profound. And so you can see that if we were to give a mainstream therapy that focused, again, on relapse prevention or motivations, or we had this idea that maybe he's drinking to self-medicate some kind of deep-seated anger problem or some anxiety, maybe those approaches really wouldn't work that well for someone like Augusten Burroughs, someone who seems to have a much deeper insight and who can understand the addiction at this more sophisticated level. At any rate, that's it for this episode, and we'll be back next time with the final episode in our understanding of addiction at a deep level.